Welcome. In this video I'm going to go over the process of installing WordPress on a Synology NAS virtual machine, and I'll be using Nginx in this process, and this will also be like a lower memory config, so this is kind of like the minimal requirements to get WordPress up and running. So you could, up the processors, up the memory, things like that to improve performance. But this is going to be like the minimal install. You can go into the Synology NAS and just install WordPress package. This is if you want more control or just want to understand the process, things like that. So the first thing we need to do is download Ubuntu. So I put a link on my web page, and to have all these notes on the web page, I'll link to this in the description. And if you notice anything's wrong or can offer any improvements to that, put those in the comments and maybe I'll make some changes if you see any improvements that can be made. If you click on this download Ubuntu minimal install, if I can click on it, let me get here. Okay, so if you go to this page and scroll down, you'll see the different types. We want the 64-bit PC version, and I'm going to use the 18.04 Bionic Beaver. So when you download that, you'll want to put it somewhere on the server. So if I go back into my Synology NAS, you'll then open up your virtual machine manager and click on virtual machine on the left side, and you can hit create here. And I'll click that I'm creating a Linux virtual machine. I'll hit next, and I'll hit next here. I'll type name, so I'll type it WordPress demo. I'm going to say I want one CPU, and for memory I'm going to choose megabytes, and I'll say 500 megabytes. And actually, I think that would be like 512. That'd be a half a gigabyte. So I'll hit next here, and it says ISO file for boot. I'll hit browse, and then go to where you downloaded that ISO. So I actually have a whole folder full of ISOs, and I have 1804. So this says mini_1804. I named it like that. When you download it, it'll just say mini.iso. Then we'll create a virtual disk. I'll just say 20 gigabytes for the virtual disk, and I'll hit next. And I'll leave the default for the network. I'll hit next. And you can set this however your preferences are. It's auto start. You'll leave BIOS, and the rest the same. You hit next here. And now you'll want to set permissions, so I'll set the user is just me. I'll hit next. And I'll check this power on virtual machine after creation. I'll hit apply, and it's going to create this virtual machine for us. It's running, so I'll click on it, and then I want to hit connect. And now it's going to bring up the installer. Hit enter here to install. I'm going to choose English, United States. I'm going to choose no for the keyboard. I'm going to choose English US here. English US here. It's going to ask for a host name, so I will call this example. I'm going to choose the Ubuntu mirror and my country. So you can enter proxy information here, and I actually do have a proxy. If you don't have a proxy set up, you can ignore this part, but this makes it faster when I do these tutorials to run them from a proxy. So I'll hit continue here. It's going to ask for a name for the user. I'll type my name in. I'll just type Rick. And username for the account, I'll type Rick. And then it's going to ask for a password, so I'll type a password in. I'll retype it. Okay, now it's going to ask for my time zone, and I'm in Central. Okay, I'm going to choose the default here, the default. I'm going to say yes, write changes to the disks. Now it's asking how we want to manage updates, and I'm going to choose install security updates automatically. Okay, so now we're at the software selection screen, and you could go down here and install the SSH server, but I'm going to do that in the next step, so I'll just hit continue here. Okay, it's asking us if we want to install the grub bootloader to the master boot record, and I'll hit yes here. Okay, it's asking about the clock being set to universal coordinated time, and I'll hit yes there. And it says the installation is complete. I'll hit continue. Okay, so now we have the login screen, so I'll log in with the username and password I created. And the first thing I'm going to do is to install the SSH server. So I'll type sudo apt space update, and this will update the packages. It'll ask for my password. And then I'll type sudo space apt install space open SSH server space, and then I will also install QEMU space guest space agent. I'll hit enter here. And then I'll hit yes. So the QEMU guest agent connects the Synology NAS virtual machine engine to the host we're on. So you'll notice when that's in place, when you go to the virtual machine manager and you see the IP address show up here under IP. So when this is done installing, we'll check that. Okay, we'll see here we have an IP address assigned to it. So it's assigned 192.168.7.191. Now I'll exit out of here. I'll close this window, minimize this, and I'll go back to my notes here. So I have a terminal up here. So now I can SSH into the machine. I think the terminal is a better interface than using the virtual console thing they give you there. So we'll type SSH space our username @ and then the IP address of the server. We'll hit enter. It'll ask us if we want to authenticate the fingerprint. We'll say yes. Type our password in again. Oops, I typed the wrong password. Type the correct password. There we go. So now we're into the machine. So we did the first thing here. We installed the SSH server. Now we want to update the server, and this may already be done. I think this does this during the install, but I'll do it anyway. So I'll copy and paste this in here. So when you type sudo, it's going to run things as the root user or the admin user, and it will ask you for your password. And then if you run a command within like 5 minutes, it won't ask you a second time. Okay, so that is complete. No updates were needed. So now we're going to install these packages. So I'll get this command started, and then I'll talk about what they are. So it'll confirm you want to install, I'll hit yes. So if we look over here, we have curl, which is a command line tool for downloading web pages and things like that. We have MySQL server, which is our database server. We have Nginx, which is the web server. And then we have PHP, and we have all these extensions. So this is the curl extension for PHP. This is the module extension for PHP. GD does graphics. This one, INTL, I think does international things, something. MB string does multi-byte strings. So that's for character languages that are more than just like the traditional alphabet. We have PHP MySQL, which connects up your PHP to your database. And then PHP SOAP, which is for APIs, and PHP XML, which is for XML language, and PHP XML RPC, which is for web services, and PHP Zip, which allows PHP to use zip. So we'll let this installation finish. Okay, the packages are all installed. And if you look on the notes next, we're running this MySQL setup, so I'll copy this and paste it over. And in my notes here, I say answer yes to all, and that is true, but in the tutorial here, I'm going to answer no. So it says validate password plugin. This makes it so you only use good passwords, but I'm just using this for a demo. So I'm going to say no to this, but you typically say yes, and then you want to make sure you have a good password. So I'll type my password in here. And the reason being is I'm just using password for my password in this tutorial, and it wouldn't allow me to do that. I don't really want to mess with a complicated password right now. So remove anonymous users, we want to say yes. Disallow root login remotely, yes. Remove the test database, yes. Reload privilege tables, yes. And we're all done. So next, this section is tune MySQL for lower memory. So we'll open up this MySQL config file, and then some of these options might already be in here. I don't remember when I made the notes if I added them or not. Let me search. I don't think these are in here, so I'll just copy these to the bottom. And then I'll save. So to save in Nano, you type Control-O to output and then Control-X to exit. And next we're going to create a self-signed certificate. So if putting this on the VM, you could host it from there, and then in that case you'd want a real certificate. I'm setting this up as it'd be more like a dev environment, so I'm going to use a self-signed certificate. So I'll copy this here, and I'll hit enter. It'll ask me for my country code. I'll type US. My state is Iowa. My locality is Des Moines. Organization name, I'll just type example, and I don't have any organizational unit. And my common name, I'll just say example.com. I won't put an email address. Okay, so what this did was created two files here. It created the key and the certificate, and it put those in the SSL directory. Next, we'll create the Nginx config. So under the sites available, you can have multiple sites. So I'm going to name this example.com. You can use whatever naming convention you want. When I open this up, I'll have a blank config, and then I want to paste in this information. And now I'll go over what this stuff is for. So we have two server config areas. The top one is, let me see. Yeah, I'll show you the two different areas. So we have the server is the top one, and that's for HTTPS, and then the bottom one is for HTTP. So let me actually start at the bottom. That's pretty simple. I don't think I got this copied actually. Let me copy the bottom here. So this server here on the bottom listens on port 80, which is the standard HTTP port, and this will redirect them to the HTTPS version of the site. So that's all you need to know about that. And then when we scroll up, we have the main config, and this is for HTTPS. So it's listening on port 443. So you could change this to port 80, get rid of the bottom thing, and just not run encryption. You could do that on your demo site if you wanted, but I like to use self-signed certificates. And then we have the root, which is the root directory of the website. The index is the index page to look for, and we have index.php. We have the server name here, and here I'm using example.com and www.example.com. And then this is the code you put in here to make it work with WordPress. And then down here we're looking at if anything is a PHP file, it runs it through the PHP processor. It turns gzip on, so this compresses the pages. It turns gzip off if you're using MSIE6. Gzip vary allows it to compress things that aren't HTML, and then we have the gzip types here. So if we go down here, this denies anything that's .ht. So this would be if you had any htaccess files on your server, it ignores those. Then we have this favicon thing, and it says a log not found off. So typically if someone tries to find a favicon on your site, and if you don't have one, it will put an error in your error log. And then let me scroll over here, you can't see it all on this interface. And then we have access log off. So this keeps it from logging at all. And the same thing with the robots. So next we have this section for serving static files. So this serves CSS, GIF, icon files, JPEGs, JavaScript, and PNG. And we have expires set to max. So this caches it on the client's browser for a long period of time. We have log not found to off. So you may want to turn this on if you're doing development and you want to see if there are any of these static files that aren't being accessed properly. We have gzip on, all the same gzip stuff. And we have this gzip static on. So with this, if you take one of these static files, like a CSS file, and you gzip it, it will serve up the gzip version as opposed to the regular version. So I may make another video on that exclusively. So once we have all this in, we can save it, Control-O, and then Control-X. And we put this in the sites available directory. We want to put a link in the sites enabled directory. So I'll copy this next line and I'll paste it down here. So now if we type ls-l and then etc nginx sites available, we'll see the two sites. Then we can type ls-l/etc/nginx sites enabled. We'll see the sites down there. And now we want to remove the default config. So we'll do that, we'll paste that in. And now if I go here and look, we don't have the default in here anymore, whereas we did before. Next, we're going to turn off server identification. So I'll copy this line over. We're going to look for a line in here called server tokens, which is right here. We'll uncomment that, so it says server tokens off. We'll save that. So this keeps it from displaying like version information about your server. It's a little security thing. You don't want to rely on it completely, but it's not a bad idea to turn it off. So now that we've made all these configuration changes, we can check our config. So we'll run this next line, which is sudo nginx-t, and this will tell us if there's an error in our config file. And thankfully there isn't. So next we'll set up the database. So we'll type sudo mysql. So the way the MySQL is set up is it allows you to gain access to it as root. So if you type sudo mysql, it gets us right into the character interface. So if you want, you can actually set a root password on this. You can Google online on how to do that. So next we'll run some MySQL statements. The first here will create the WordPress database. And I'm just using WordPress for this, but you may want to name it, like on here I could name it example.com. Or I don't know if you can use a dot. You might have to do like example_com. But I'm just using WordPress right now. If you have a multi-site setup, you'd want to change that. And now we'll create a username and password. So we'll run this next one. So here we're using the username WordPress user and password WordPress pass. So you would want to use a real password and make it a good one too. But for this tutorial, I'm just using this. And then we want to run this grant statement. So this allows your user to have access to the database you created, and flush privileges will activate everything that we just did. And then we can type exit to get out of here. So now we'll want to restart the services. So I'll start with PHP, although I don't think we did anything to PHP, but we'll restart anyway. And then we'll reload Nginx, and we'll do the same with MySQL, except I have an error in this one. I'll fix that before I post it. There we go. Actually, I had two different typos in there, so I'll fix that before I post it. Okay, so now we want to install WordPress, so I'll type cd to get back to my home directory if I've changed out of my home directory, and then I'll run this curl command to download the latest WordPress source. And then I'll type char, I'll type zxvf, so z uncompresses, x extracts, the v is verbose, and f is file. And then I'll type latest here, and this will uncompress this whole thing. Now we'll type cp space WordPress /wp-config -sample.php and space WordPress /wp-config and then just .php. So we're copying the sample config to a separate config file. Next we'll type sudo space copy space -a space WordPress /dot and then space, and then we'll type /var/www/example.com. We'll hit enter, and I'll type cd, although I haven't changed directories. Then I can type rm space -f capital R space WordPress. So this will delete the WordPress we just downloaded since we've installed it. And you could leave it there, but it's probably not a bad idea to keep it cleaned up. So then I'll type sudo space chown space -r space www-data www-data space /var/www/example.com. So this will change the permissions to this user and group for the directory we just set up. Now we'll run this curl command. I'll hit enter. Well, this is kind of hard to see here. Let me expand this out. So this will create these secret keys. So if I was doing this as an actual build, I wouldn't want to show this to you all online, but I'm going to be deleting this when I'm done. So you want to run this curl command, and then you can copy all of this. And then we want to type sudo space nano space /www/example.com /wp-config.php. I'm going to enlarge this a little bit here. If we scroll down, we'll see a section here that looks like the one we just downloaded. So you can type Control-K to delete these lines here, and then I will paste this in from what I copied earlier. So that's the replacing keys and salts. Then we want to update the DB name, user, and password. So we passed that earlier. So the database name, I named it WordPress, and then the username I chose was WordPress user. And the password was WordPress pass. So now I'm going to scroll all the way down to the bottom. And I'm going to add on this FS method direct. So this allows us to download plugins and updates and things like that without setting up FTP access. So I have this all done. I'll hit Control-O to save, Control-X to exit. And now this next section, it's probably not super important if you're running this on your own network, but this is for setting up the firewall. So if we type sudo ufw status, it's going to say inactive. So we can add all of this. I'll copy this and paste it here. And now if we run that status again, this will show us our firewall status. So what we have here is 22 is for SSH, and then we have 80 is for HTTP, and 443 is for HTTPS. So to make this secure is if you have this on a public server, you may want to set this SSH to only allow from your IP address that you remotely access it from. When you're running on a VM like this, you could disable it completely and use the virtual interface to get to it, but you probably want to leave it open, or you can change ports and things like that, but I'm not getting into that in this video. And next we have find the IP address. So we did SSH into this, so you probably should know the IP address, but you can type IP-A, and we have the IP address here. So now if we go into the web server, we should be able to open this. And you'll get this message that says this connection is not private, and this is because we're using a self-signed certificate. And I'll hit show details. Now if you're using Chrome or Firefox or IE, they will all show different messages, but it's the same kind of thing. You need to bypass all the errors. I'm going to click visit this website. It's going to ask me for my password. And now we're here on the setup. So we can hit continue here. We'll give this a name. We'll type a username. It's going to give us a password, so I'll copy that. Oops. There. Well, that didn't work. Well, I have it here on the screen. You want to copy that somewhere. And then you can enter your email address and choose this search engine visibility. I'll leave it as is. Now I'll hit install WordPress. It says I must give it an email address. And what's this password? Okay. Okay, so it says WordPress has been installed, so I'll hit login. So as an administrator, you're going to want to pay attention to this. It's WP-login. That's how you log into this. And it's a little more advanced, but you could go into Nginx and restrict this to only your IP address also. It's not a bad idea. So I'll type in my username and password. And now I'm in my own WordPress instance. So I can post. Okay. And I'm not doing a comprehensive video on using WordPress, but I just want to show you we can post here. We can go to the plugins and we can add a new plugin. Let's say like Jetpack. We can hit install now. And if we go to we can hit activate. And we've activated it. I'm not going to set this all up, but you can see here we're able to install a plugin. Some things you want to watch for. Your updates will come up here, so if there's a newer version. One nice thing about this install process is it installs the latest version, so you shouldn't have any updates, but if you have any updates, they'll show up here and you can hit them. I think this will automatically install security updates, so this would be for feature updates and plugin updates and things like that. Okay, so that's the basics of setting up WordPress on a Synology VM with Nginx as the web server. And if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. If you like this video, please click like. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, I'd appreciate it if you could do that. And thanks for watching. Until next time, goodbye.